All right. Hello, everybody. We will let everyone come into the webinar, take a few minutes as everyone arrives. I'm Joe Sparrow, Music Ally's Managing Editor, and welcome to this month's Music Ally Trendline. Over the next 30 minutes or so, we'll take you through some of the key trends and stories from the past month in music business news. And the format here is not just to tell you what happened, because that would be boring. So instead, it's about drawing links, adding context, and offering Music Ally's analysis of what might happen next. Don't forget that we have a chat room here in Zoom somewhere and a Q&A box as well. You can all be found somewhere here in Zoom. So enable them and jump in and chat and ask questions as you see fit. Now, hopefully, you should be able to see my slides now for this trendline presentation. If you can't, let me know, and I will fix it. In the next half an hour, we're going to talk about the big story of the month, then two more key trends, and I'm going to tell you about some of the hottest startups and the most important music marketing trends across our radar in the past month. And I'll finish with and finally, in the noble tradition of news programs that like to send you off to sleep with something happy in your mind at the end, and it's worth staying tuned for. Big thanks as ever to Stuart Dredge, Music Ally's head of insight, who's done all the hard work here and pulled this analysis together for me to take the credit for. All right, let's get started. Now, the big story this month is about how some bands just always look perfectly lit, no matter what they're doing. Look, here they are, and it looks like they have a movie lighting crew with them 24 hours a day. Okay, that's not the story, but this is the Velvet Sundown, the AI-generated band whose AI-generated music had, as of this weekend, had more than 1 million listeners on Spotify. This has been a rapidly developing story with some fun twists and turns, so I'll briefly recap what it all was before talking about what it all means. So a couple of weeks ago, people on Reddit started reporting that a rather generically 1970s style rock band called the Velvet Sundown had appeared in their Discover weekly playlists, and that they suspected that the band's photo and music were AI generated. Author and music influencer Chris Dallariva picked up on the story, and so did we. So what we found was that the band had more than 325,000 monthly listeners on Spotify, but their music was also on other streaming platforms, with DistroKid their distributor. Their Spotify bio included a review quote from Billboard that was made up, and none of the named band members had any online footprint at all. DSP Deezer had tagged their music as being possibly created using AI as part of its new detection system that has recently launched. We also found a suspicious network of Spotify playlists on which the band had been discovered. That included a Vietnam War music playlist, presumably for people whose primary memory of that conflict was the terrific music that the US Army listened to, and a VOC soundtrack All Seasons playlist. Both of them were stuffed with the band's songs. That's impressive given that the Vietnam War ended 50 years before the Velvet Sundown's first album supposedly came out, while the American TV series The OC's last episode aired 18 years before that first release. So either time-traveling sync deals are now a thing, which might actually possibly explain the resurgence of several bands' music in recent years, or something suspicious was happening, especially as most of those playlists came from just 4 curator brands. Since then, things moved really quickly. An account on X claiming to represent Velvet Sundown started having a go at journalists who'd written about the band without getting in touch first, whilst also saying that this is absolutely not AI music. We spotted that this wasn't the X account, formerly known as Twitter, linked from the band's Spotify profile, though. So yes, it was a fake spokesperson for a not real band. We pointed this out at the time, but it didn't stop lots of journalists quoting those tweets in their stories. You can see that this has subsequently had the parody account tag added to it. And this, by the way, was AI music. The French tech firm Urcam Amplify has a tool that detects AI music and the platform that music was made with. We asked them to have a look at it, and they shared the results that they got from the Velvet Sundown's music, and it showed that the music that had indeed been created using the latest version of Suno, one of the generative AI music startups currently being sued by record labels. Since then, Rolling Stone interviewed the spokesperson, a man called Andrew Freelon, who was evasive about the source of the music and the playlist strategy behind this. and claimed that the project was an art hoax. But then the very next day, this man, who's not called Andrew Freylon, by the way, wrote a blog post admitting that he had nothing to do with the Velvet Sundown and was just trying to highlight poor journalism by pretending to be its spokesperson on X. He even got ChatGPT to write his tweets claiming that the band weren't AI. So AI in fakery. So while he had his fun, a week and a bit into this story cycle, we still don't really know who's behind the Velvet Sundown, what their intentions are, and how they built that early momentum on Spotify. The band has subsequently updated their Spotify bio to say that this is a, quote, synthetic music project guided by human creative direction. As you can see, they have 1 million listeners on that platform alone, and they have a third album coming out next week, complete with a pre-save countdown page. And what's more, they're just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to this sort of thing. We'd like to tip our hat at this point to Tim Ingham at Music Business Worldwide, who's been conducting his own investigation into other seemingly AI-generated artists doing big numbers on Spotify. Aventhis, Nick Hustles, The Devil Inside, and more. He tracked 13 artists with 4.1 million monthly listeners between them. Now, this all feels like, capital letters, a moment for the music industry, but what does it all mean? Well, first of all, this is going to put a rocket under the arguments about what streaming services and distributors should be doing with AI-generated music when they detect it. Should it be labeled as AI-generated? Should it be kept out of their algorithmic recommendations? Should it be paid lower royalties than human music, or even demonetized entirely? Or should it not even be allowed onto those streaming platforms in the first place and living instead on the platforms where it is made, which have a Spotify or DSP-like interface to explore music? On all of this rests another big question, which is how much human input does AI-generated music need before we class it as human music instead? This is a very topical question because Suno and Udio, two of the biggest AI music platforms and also the ones that are being sued by labels, are both making moves to give more control to their users in that creation process. Suno has just acquired a company called WavTool, which makes a browser-based DAW, that's digital audio workstation, to improve its editing features. Udio has been building rather than buying, but to the same effect, giving people more ability to edit, reorder, remix, and generally humanify, and yes, we are coining that term, sadly, the music output from the system. In other words, increasingly, music won't be created by Suno or Udio, but by humans using Suno or Udio, which has implications for anyone, like streaming services, that are setting rules that apply to AI music. But back to those questions. One issue is simple. If streams of an AI music track or album are being artificially inflated, for example, using bots, that's streaming fraud. It's pure and simply defined like that. And when detected, those royalties will be frozen, and the music will be kicked off the services, and the distributors will be given a Paddington Bear grade hard stare by the DSP, or even fined. So not all AI music is fraudulent, but a lot of streaming fraud uses AI music. It's one of the only ways that you can generate enough music at scale to make this kind of fraud work. Deezer said last month that up to 70% of AI music streams on its service are fraudulent, which sounds like a lot, but that stat needs a little bit of explanation. Deezer also said that AI music only accounts for 0.5% of its total streams. So some maths, 70% of 0.5 is 0.35. So only 0.35% of Deezer's total streams are AI music-enabled fraud. Now, that's a tiny proportion of overall listening and a tiny slice of the royalties pool. Also, Deezer has said that 18% of its uploads to its service are fully AI-generated music. So put that together with the other figures, and you see a picture of floods of AI music being uploaded, but nobody really listening to it, apart from bots belonging to fraudsters. This may not be the music industry that you all decided to join. Anyway, even so, there's a snapshot of this moment in time. What the Velvet Sundown, Nick Hustles, and all these other AI artists, or alleged AI artists, show us is that this music is getting better. It's now listenable, and some of the people making it are also spending time creating believable artists, or at least the marketing around them. And AI being what it is, the technology improves in leaps and bounds every single month. So the music industry and its DSP partners need to work out exactly how they want these AI artists and their AI music to be treated. We also can't gloss over the source of the music. The Velvet Sundown appears to be a creative project with some creative humans behind it, but they're using a platform, sounds like it's Suno, which labels allege has scraped, allegedly, a huge amount of copyrighted music without permission or payment to train its models. Now, to some people, this music is fruit from a poisoned tree, which you can see illustrated here. So even if streaming fraud isn't involved in the Velvet Sundown's rise, their popularity may leave a bad taste in the mouth for many people in the music industry. And the sensitivities around Suno were highlighted last month when Timbaland, the producer, apologized to another music producer, K-Fresh, after he uploaded a track using one of the latter's beats to Suno without permission in a demonstration. The K-Fresh controversy brought him a lot of criticism online, and his apology here showed that it really hit home. Timbaland is a partner of Suno, though, and he's going to be using it for his new startup, Stage Zero, which plans to launch its own AI-generated artists. We note with interest even, that he's following the Velvet Sundown on Instagram, although we'll stop short of suggesting that he's behind the project. He's presumably just as curious as we are about where it's going next. Finally, last month saw two very interesting legal rulings around AI and copyright in the US. They came in lawsuits filed by groups of authors against Anthropic and Meta. In both cases, the tech firms came out on top, leading to some coverage suggesting that it's now absolutely fine to train an AI on copyrighted material without asking permission or paying for it. That it's fair use, in quotes, to use the legal term in the US. In short, it's not, but not yet anyway. We have a lot to get through today, so I won't spend half an hour explaining why, but I will point you to our analysis piece for that, which breaks down how these rulings relate to music lawsuits over AI. So if you search for this headline on musically.com, you can read the full analysis. Now, I'm going to move on to two other key trends from this month that we've been covering. First, it's Goldman Sachs, whose team of analysts have been making their predictions for music industry revenues through to 2035 in their latest report called Music in the Air. And there's a big number to start, a very big number. They reckon the global music market will be worth $113 billion this year and rising to $196.8 billion in 2035. How does this break down? Well, the report reckons that recorded music is going to be a $31.4 billion market this year, with music publishing worth $10.7 billion and live music worth $38.2 billion. So super stonks all round. But here's the thing, slightly less stonks than Goldman Sachs previously expected. It's actually lowered its predictions. Last year, it expected a $114.8 billion market this year. It hasn't changed its publishing forecasts, and it's actually increased its live forecast from 37.7 billion. But recorded music is going to be, according to this estimate, $2.5 billion smaller this year than expected. Why? Well, a few reasons. Free ad-supported streaming is underperforming expectations, which is a mixture of the shift from the long to the short video and continued wobbles for the global economy. It's also tweaked its assumptions for paid streaming growth down a little bit for similar reasons. There's a lot of other stuff in the report, and here are some quick bullet-pointed takeaways that we pulled out. That music should remain resilient in a macroeconomic downturn, although physical sales and revenues in sync may find issues. The boom in music catalog sales is leading to more active management of music publishing catalogs, quote, which means that people are working these catalogs harder and more effectively according to their analysis. They reckon that streaming services are doing more with pre-sale tickets and could generate more than $100 million of extra revenues annually. By 2035, they also think emerging markets will account for up to 75% of net new music subscribers. That's the number of people. And Goldman Sachs now sees this superfan market opportunity as being worth around $4.3 billion a year. This is 20% of streaming subscribers spending twice as much on a subscription that's made for superfans. Anyway, you can expect to see a lot more of those figures and more from that report in slide decks over the coming year, as Goldman Sachs's reports are often used by startups, music companies, investors, and others in their pitches and analyses. Our second key trend this month is not about Petula Clark, sadly, but it is about Downtown Music Holdings and the latest developments in Universal Music Group's plan to buy it. Those latest developments include a formal review by the European Commission. So it was announced in mid-June, the report that is, that when UMG formally notified the EC of its proposed $775 million deal. The EC has set a provisional deadline of the 27th of July, so just a couple of weeks away, for its initial decision. This is going to be relatively speedy work from them to decide whether, in the Commission's words, the deal could, quote, significantly affect competition in certain markets of the music value chain, end quote. Tensions within the industry are, frankly, boiling over around the discussion of whether UMG should be allowed to buy Downtown or not. Independent sector bodies, as well as this month, the former chief economist of the UK competition watchdog, the CMA, have a number of reasons why they think it shouldn't be allowed to happen. Here's why, and then we'll discuss what UMG said. So why are they opposing this? Well, they think it gives UMG basically too much leverage in DSP deals. And secondly, they worry that the overall deal would make independent music companies and artists too dependent on UMG, or that it would narrow the options they have outside with major labels to distribute their music, manage their royalties, and more. That's sort of talking about all the businesses that are clustered within Downtown that would become part of this deal. Thirdly, criticism of the deal focuses on whether it would give UMG a huge amount of data from those services on streams and royalties of independent artists and labels. The critics see that as data that could be used anti-competitively, for example, trying to poach artists who show momentum or to fuel hardball offers when investing in or buying independent companies. However, this month saw the first public comments from the UMG camp in the form of a Music Business Worldwide guest column from PS co-founder Kenny Gates and an internal memo, which was very quickly leaked, from Virgin Music Group co-CEOs Nat Pastor and JT Myers. The context here is this. PS were formally acquired by UMG last year, while Virgin Music Group would be the parent entity for Downtown Music if the deal is approved and it goes through. So to summarize their counter-arguments, Gates pointed to UMG's dispute with TikTok last year as an example of it using its power for good, benefiting the independent sector as well as its own artists. He also hit back at the idea of major-owned distributors cutting options for artists. And he said that many are settled, this is a quote, settled, successful, and happy in these business relationships, and they're free to leave if that relationship changes or how they feel about it. He also said that an indies versus majors narrative isn't just out of date, but it distracts from dealing with bigger challenges. Those being the value gap in short-form video, the growing influence of VC and private equity in music rights ownership, textual copyright, AI, all those kind of things. In short, big tech and big finance are the problem for the independents, not the majors, they're saying. The Virgin Music memo addressed that criticism as well. Pastor and Myers said that Virgin will not exploit Downtown Music's data to give UMG an unfair competitive advantage, and suggested as well that if they did, labels and artists would leave. They also pushed back on claims from the indies body Impala that UMG's market share in Europe has grown sharply since it bought EMI back in 2012. This is an important allegation for the EC inquiry, and they also hit out at what they see as name-calling from the independent side of this argument. And they also said that they will invest in Downtown's various businesses and expand access to their services. a response to worries that they might close some of them or restrict those services under Downtown to artists on its own roster. It's all getting very heated, and we don't see that simmering down in the coming weeks amid this EC investigation. So it will be the regulator's job to dig below the name calling and the promises of good behavior to understand exactly what this acquisition might mean and, if it's approved, what guardrails might be needed to ensure those promises are kept. So those are the trends we've picked out this month. And if you'll forgive me, it's time for a big plug. This image is what you get if you go a little too far down a silly rabbit hole when trying to get an AI platform to make a picture of a big plug. Anyway, what are we plugging? Well, first of all, Music Ally had 2 new international launches in June. Music Ally South Asia is our new offshoot, which covers the industry in India, Pakistan, and the surrounding countries. It's starting out as a weekly newsletter, and we're excited to be reaching people in the region and also bringing news from there to the Western industry and the rest of the world. Go to musically.com/south-asia. The link, thank you, Patrick, is in the chat right now to sign up, and you'll receive the newsletter every single week, and it'll give you a great insight into the region, which is an incredibly exciting and rapidly expanding one. Secondly, Music Ally Vietnam is a program supported by the British Council to help develop Vietnam's music community. The team there will be sharing knowledge, digital skills, and networking opportunities with industry pros and local musicians alike. Check it out. Secondly, a quick note about our next live event, which is happening in London this October. It's the annual Music Ally Publishing Summit, where we've already announced a keynote even, with Pop Arabia and Reservoir Spec, and panels on AI, DSPs, and publishers, the future of sync, and more. Go to musically.com/publishing-summit to find more about that. And Patrick, my glamorous assistant in the chat, has also shared that with you. Okay, enough plugging. Let's talk about one of Music Ally's favorite areas, which is music tech and startups. We've picked out 3 of the early stage companies who we've covered this month. Now, pop quiz, who is this? Starting with this man. He's Andreas Carlsson. He's a Swedish songwriter and producer, and he wrote I Want It That Way for Backstreet Boys and Born to Make You Happy for Britney Spears. Now he's a startup founder, and that startup is Hyph. Hyph. It's a music creation app where you get access to a big catalog of free sounds that you can mix and remix to create your own songs and then share them within the app as well as on social media. For people who are more serious, you can then release your work on streaming services and even sell your vocals. It's free to use, and it has a $19.99 US dollars monthly subscription for the pro features if you want it that way. Let's move on to this man. It's Wyclef Jean, of course, and he wrote or co-wrote Hips Don't Lie for Shakira and, of course, numerous Fuji songs as well. And he's smiling because he's also a startup founder, and that startup is this one, OpenWav. It's more of a superfan platform, which by our count is the 768th to launch this year. And in it, artists can gather their fans, sell them tickets and merchandise, and run fan communities. Wyclef is the chief music officer, and he does actually have a history in music technology. He invested in the Web3 music firm Arpeggi-Labs in 2022, and was also one of the only 3 musicians to get early access to Google's Music AI Sandbox tools last year. By the way, Warner Music Group is also an investor in OpenWav, so it's already attracted the attention of one major label with its pitch, which we are told, don't lie. Our third startup is Syntho, which has been around, here it is, for a while, but it got its first coverage from us this month. It's an online education startup focusing on electronic music production. It's founded by musician Josh Baker, and it recently appointed Hazel Savage, whose name you may recognize, whose previous startup Museo was brought by SoundCloud, and she is now its CEO. Syntho courses are presented by musicians and producers, and this month they popped up on a new platform, Spotify, as part of its education courses vertical. You can search for our interview with Hazel on musically.com, in which she talked about the Spotify deal and also why Syntho is part of an under-discussed trend she believes in investment circles right now, a shift away from AI startups towards what she thinks are unreplicable human offerings. So a very interesting, different dynamic to have a look at there as well. So those are the three startups we focus on, or we picked out to focus on this month. And at this part of Trendlines, we're going to turn our attention to another big area for Music Ally, which is a big specialism of ours, which is music marketing. Now, through our sandbox report at the Music Ally Pro platform, we keep a keen eye on campaigns of all kinds, as well as the developments in the platforms that enable them. And there's another big number to absorb there as well as we talk about that. There was a big milestone this month for YouTube Shorts, which was also announced at the Cannes Lions, or Cannes Lions, if you like, conference. Shorts are now being watched 200 billion times a day on YouTube on average. Now that's up from 70 billion in March 2024, which sounds like huge growth. But as we pointed out in our news story, there is a caveat attached to that as well. Since the end of March, YouTube has counted 1 view every time a Shorts video starts to play or replay. Before that, it had to play for a few seconds for it to count. So if you scroll past a short video, you're still giving it a view and it's adding to that number. That is a factor in what looks like huge growth for the format. But in the meantime, there's a lot going on elsewhere in short form video with TikTok's features for creators and artists. This month, it launched TikTok for Artists, a dashboard giving musicians daily analytics for their music and posts on TikTok, including data on their fan demographics, gender, age, and language. It's also has a pre-release tool designed to prod fans to pre-save albums on partner streaming services like Spotify and Apple Music initially. Alongside this, TikTok announced that every day, another big number, 130 million people are live streaming on its platform. And we don't know how many of these are musicians or artists of any kind, but we do know that a growing number of artists are making use of this feature, both established stars and the musicians who are native to TikTok and building their audiences there. TikTok is also testing some new superfan features. Live Fan Club gives fans a way to interact with live streamers in chat rooms, get notified when they go live, and earn rewards like badges for their profiles and entrance spotlights for when they tune into a stream. Yes, this is where culture has now reached, folks. Mariah Carey may not do stairs, but I don't do a live stream unless I get my own spotlight when I enter the chat. I deserve this. And so do TikTok's superfans, as you can now see. Another TikTok test that was reported on this month are bulletin boards, which anyone over a certain age may remember is a phrase from the earliest days of the internet, and it's being reconfigured for this social media era. Bulletin boards are TikTok's equivalent of Instagram's broadcast channels. It's a way for creators and artists to send one-to-many messages out to fans who've signed up, and the Jonas Brothers are among the testers. Our next marketing story is, sadly, a slightly negative one. Beer brand Budweiser is getting a boozy bashing from the music biz for a marketing campaign that won a prestigious Cannes Lions Award last month. The campaign was clever. Ads on TikTok that played only 1 second of famous tracks and then challenged people to guess the song. It featured music from Beyonce, the Beatles, Taylor Swift, and Foo Fighters, artists you may have heard of, amongst others that were featured. But here's the thing. In the submission for the award that they won, Budweiser's agency boasted that it didn't have to pay any music royalties due to the length of the sample, which was 1 second long. And the head judge for its category cited that as one of the reasons that it won an award. So not paying for music is great innovation. Well done. Here's a Grand Prix prize. To rub salt into the wound, in the submission, the agency made a point of saying how crucial music was to that campaign. So maybe they were right, and they didn't have to pay, technically, music royalties. But boasting about it is perhaps long-term not a good idea. It's bad optics for a brand that does a lot with music and may now see this campaign brought up when it's in future talks with artists or music companies. So that's the main part of the analysis for this month. We've done key trends, we've done startups, and we've done marketing stories. And it's time for, and finally, to leave you on a lighter note this month. Meet Groove Thing. As you can see, this is the world's first internal music player. And if you're wondering what internal means here, Yes, it's a music player with a paired vibrator that delivers music to the parts that earphones don't, or if I know my AirPods terms and conditions correctly, shouldn't reach. It's the final frontier, or maybe the rear ear of music consumption. We haven't chosen Groove Thing only for a juvenile giggle, though. It's a genuinely interesting piece of music tech and an interesting story. And at least, well, that's at least what I'll be telling my colleagues at Music Ally when they see my search history anyway. The startup behind it is raising money on Kickstarter, and as of this weekend, has raised more than 315,000 US dollars, which smashes their goal of over $10,000. Mind-blowing. A concert in my vagina is the promotional quote from one beta tester. And we think that the crowdfunding success here is pretty mind-blowing as well. So there's clearly a market for this product. In fact, we did some research. We found 5 recent reports making predictions for the swelling size of the global sex toys market. When we averaged out those forecasts, they came to a whopping 31.9 billion US dollars this year. As a reminder, going back to the start, Goldman Sachs thinks that recorded music will be a 31.4 billion US dollar market this year. Sexual wellness is a rapidly growing market, and so inserting music into it is nothing to laugh at. So be prepared for a vibe shift in how you consume your music in the future. So that's the wrap on our latest Trendlines webinar, or for the prepared part anyway. Well, we've shared some links in the chat to Music Ally Pro, the Publishing Summit, Music Ally South Asia, and more. Please do check those out. And don't forget, this week, coming up soon, our new podcast, The Price of Music, launches in its exciting new Music Ally flavored form. It's your new essential weekly music biz explainer with Steve Lamacq and Music Ally's own Stuart Dredge on the microphones, explaining everything that's happening every week in the music industry. And hopefully my glamorous assistant, Patrick, will there it is. We'll share a link to it there in the chat, and you can sign up to it and hear it every Wednesday, approximately, when it comes out. So that's it. Thanks for joining us here on Music Ally Trendline again. We'll do another one about the same time next month, where we'll wrap up everything that we've been doing and reporting on, and that we think is important from the previous month. So thank you all for joining us very much. And sign up for the next one, and we'll be in touch. Farewell.